Welcome to Living the Dream with Tia. I'm your host. This is a Mother's Day special, and I would love to introduce to you my guest, Abdul Majid.
Hey, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Definitely. Thanks for being a part of it today. It's a Mother's Day weekend coming up, so I'm definitely excited.
I know I was thinking of when you asked me to come on to discuss this, I know it's going to be an interesting conversation because both of us have, we'll call it a complicated mother's relationship with Mother's Day.
Mhm.
I want for my part, I'll tell it. My mother passed when I was 25, and before my mother passed, 6 years prior to that, about when I was 19, she got paralyzed.
Mm.
So from 19 to 25, it was 6 years of, just Mother's Day wasn't good. You know what I mean? Because you're constantly reminded of what is. And then
Yeah.
prior to that, growing up, I moved around a lot. My parents got divorced. So, you know, trying to build a relationship with your mom, because I lived mostly with my dad, and all that goes with it, it makes Mother's Day interesting. It wasn't a typical Mother's Day for me. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's my complication with it. What about yourself?
Well, I want to know, was it a little different not having a female figure around like most sons would?
So okay. I have an older sister. I'm the middle from my mother's children because my parents had multiple relationships. For my mother's kids, I'm the middle kid of five. So I have an older sister she was always there because my parents were always working. We didn't grow up with a lot of money. We weren't privileged in that scenario.
Right.
So my parents were always working. So I had an older sister who was the guardian of us and was the one who we had to look after. So in that regard, I did have a someone to look up to. When my parents divorced, the women, my younger sister and my older sister and my younger brother, went to live with my mother, and
Yeah.
then myself and my older brother went to live with my dad.
Mm.
So in those times, you know, I'm a little bit older than probably most of your guests. So it was in the 90s, and in the 90s, you know, communication wasn't the best. My mother lived in California. We moved back to New Jersey.
Mm.
So that bond, that mother son bond that you would normally have, wasn't
Mm.
wasn't what's the word I'm looking for? Enriched in any way, shape, or form, just because there's a lot going on. You know what I mean? When your parents get divorced and people are picking sides and the reasons that nobody's business, but things happen, and all,
Mhm.
all the all the things that happen within a divorce. You're just trying to, and I'm in my teens at the time. You're trying to just figure out your way, and that's right around the time where you discover girls. Like really try to in high school. You try to discover girls, and it would have been nice to have my mom there to ask certain questions because uh, I had a friend put it the best. This is the best way. He said when you're at home with your mother and your sister, you learn about women. When you go outside, you learn about the bees.
That's
So
funny.
you know what I mean? You learn
Mhm.
you learn about that everyone's not like your mother, your sister. They don't have the compassion for you. Their motives and agendas are different than yours, and some are good, some are bad. But you learn the hard way. You fell on your face a lot, and your mother's the one that says she ain't the one for you. She ain't like when I would. My mother never met anybody that I ever dated because, like I said, I was a late bloomer in that capacity in terms of having a long term girlfriend. But when my sister, or other people who were around me who loved me, they'd be like, in a split second, they could be like, that ain't the one for you.
Mm.
Because there was something about women who know other women and they just know. And it would have been nice for my mom to be like, yo, that ain't it.
For you to
And all,
feel navigated, for her to navigate it. And
help me navigate it and also give me the assurance. Because for a very long time, because my mother wasn't there, I was looking for the assurance from women
mm.
to make me feel a certain way, to make me to validate me because men want to be validated by the
Yep.
women that they're with. It's just they can, women know this, and it's the ones who don't know. I will tell you that you can, with one word or a wink or a rub on the mat, you can make a man feel like $1 million, or you can make him feel like 2 cents.
Yeah.
And I've been in many situations where I felt like 2 cents. And it would have been nice if my mother was around to be like, that ain't it.
Yeah.
Or, you know what I mean? Just help me navigate the situation. So
So as a man, you miss that nurturing.
I don't ever think you get over um uh wanting the approval and the love of your mom. Even when you're a kid and you're rebelling and you're sort of trying to,
Man up.
become man up, become whoever you are, trying to find some independence, find an identity.
Yeah.
You still want your mother's,
Yeah.
approval.
Well, it's the same thing for myself, as a daughter who had a mother who wasn't very nurturing. I think for myself, I was even feeling a bit deprived from that. And I'm not sure what I yearned for, because I didn't have my mother or my father. Sorry, let me take that back. I had my mother, but I didn't have my father. But my mother was not emotionally available,
Mm.
and she was our caregiver, our house provider. My grandmother lived at home with me, so that was a little bit of my nurturing, but that was also restrictive because my mother had to control things a certain way. So the dynamic was not so nurturing, not so warm and welcoming. And now being a mother to a young man, um, I've been intentional about being nurturing. And sometimes as a mom, you also don't know if you're being too nurturing, right? Because then they start to push you off and start to man up, as you said, and kind of make you feel like they don't want what you have to offer. And it doesn't stop me. I continue to do it because I'm like, he'll remember it later. But it's definitely something that it goes both ways because you try to raise your boys into men to
Mm.
feel like, you know, they don't have to be mama's boys or whatever that looks like for someone. And then myself, I'm very much about making sure he's independent. He's, you know, being able to take care of himself. He's well rounded. Like I'm very conscious of that because I also, have dealt with the paternal side of my son where, I saw how the mom and dad coddled and, didn't allow him to grow in his own way. So I feel like, for me, I'm mindful of like, okay, I want this boy to be a young man, to be independent, to be strong. So there's like two tails to it because, I'm also very nurturing, very loving. And it's funny because I didn't get that as much at home. Sometimes maybe I think I'm overly, I'm too nurturing. My grandmother is a loving person, even though she was restricted in the house. When I moved out, she showed me that side of, where I remember cuddling with her and laying with her and for whatever the limits were allowed, the perimeters expanded. So I was like, okay, this is my nurturing side. But to be honest, for a long time, I dealt with, trying to figure out relationships and what does being a woman look like, a nurturing woman, a caring woman, a compassionate woman, a loving woman, because my mother wasn't really like that. So it was kind of like, I feel like I failed relationships myself, like, not understanding what does that guidance look like. So it goes both ways because I didn't have my mother to guide me on that, and I didn't have my father to guide me on how to choose a man. So it's interesting because now being a mother for Mother's Day, or every Mother's Day, it does feel a little bit like a little bit of a, I won't even say a detachment. It just feels like, how to celebrate it. I have to always just celebrate myself in being the best mother that I've been able to be, of the version that I think is supposed to be. And all of that usually comes from me praying to God and asking Him how to guide me and, direct me into how to be the best version for my son as a mother. Because I don't want to be overbearing. I don't want to be, the things that can also hinder a child, as they say.
Mm.
But at the same time, I try to find that balance. And, when we have parents, especially what they say or what they known as Black moms, Black moms tend to have more of a stricter way of being. Not to say all of them, but there's a lot of us growing up in the 80s and 90s lived with that. You know what I mean? And they were always trying to be strong, and maybe it's the era and trying to prove themselves during those times. I don't know, because I would say that this day and age, everyone's gentle parenting. Everyone's loving on their children a little differently. um if it's not extra loving on them, it's like not loving them hardly at all. So at least it's enough to where you feel like, I don't have to do things the same way as my mother did or as my parents did in raising me. And I feel like so many people are waking up to that now, and
Mhm.
that's something that I've been able to explore and be more proud of, celebrating Mother's Day.
So I guess I have two questions for you. Once, because you're so intentional about the way you raise your son, now that he's a teenager, correct? He's a teenager
Yes.
now. As a
Big,
teenager, how does it? What'd you say?
he's a big 15.
Big at the big 15. How does it feel from a mother's perspective to now being rejected a little bit, like the little bit of rejection that you get? And then my second question is, growing up, did you do anything for your mothers for Mother's Day? And now, explain what's your relationship like with her, and do you celebrate her, or do you just like? I guess you can go from there.
Yeah, I think as my relationship with my son and feeling a little bit rejected at times, it's literally building a hard shell, like a thick skin,
Mm-hmm.
And I think over the years, I've had to have those talks with myself, let alone when other people are like, oh, just ignore it. That's how they are. That's what they do. Um, I've had to really embrace the fact that he doesn't like today, actually. Funny enough, I asked him while he was doing his work, what are you doing? And he was like, just looking up my science. I was like, all right, you want to come lay in the bed with me? And, just lay across my bed. You just want to come in my room? And he was like, okay, is it cooler in there? And I was like, yeah, I think so. And while I was editing and doing something, I felt a little bit like I did something different than what I usually do. Cause usually I just go in his room and I just, hey, how you doing? I sometimes try to lay on his bed, often try to lay on his bed. And he's always like, it's too small. I'm like, let me squeeze in there. And I do that a lot especially when I'm gone throughout the day. So I tend to, push my love on because it's a memory. You know what I mean? It's a memory, even though when I go and kiss him or when I go and lay on him, he's like, and I just look at it as this will be a memory that he'll always know that I did rather than I didn't. And that is what I do appreciate about my persistence, my way of loving, not feeling like rejection hurts. And I think that's what a lot of parents feel is they don't like to be rejected. I would say as far as my mom, she dealt with a lot of that. She and I have a very estranged relationship because she didn't like my rejection, because she didn't like rejection in general, because she was going through her own turmoils, relationships, divorces, remarry, divorce, all the things. And personally, she took it out on me. And a lot of it is her pain and her hurt. And I just don't think she knew how to convey love because she didn't love herself. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
just the point of it. Um, and even myself, I've had to learn how to convey love by learning how to love myself, as well as my son teaching me what love looks like when he's so little and he's just innocent and just pure love and hugs and all that. That actually taught me, how to be as embracing to love and nurturing. But as far as my relationship with her now, I never knew how to celebrate her. I never knew how to celebrate her for a holiday. I never knew how to show her, because even when I did, the few times I did in my younger age, maybe, you know, after high school, 18, 19, 20, maybe little cards or flower or whatever. I don't like flowers. I don't, they die, or like cards, she would never really put words on the card. She'd just say, love mom, It was like her way of showing me love is kind of what taught me how to love her. And unfortunately, that wasn't very much. So it was very hard to know how to show her what love looks like. Well, I couldn't make her happy in any way. So I just think everything was always felt rejected. And in turn, I feel like she always had to reject me and in some psychological way. So I don't know if she is even aware or as intentional, but it's just in her nature of how she treats me. So I think for me, I've never been able to celebrate her for Mother's Day. I mean, along the years, maybe a call, hey, happy Mother's Day, maybe even a text, if that, you know what I mean? But it's never really been much. And even me as a new mother, she never really did that with me. It would maybe be a text message, happy Mother's Day, I love you, but that's literally as far as it goes. So you tend to love people as far as how they love you, and that's really all I could offer her, which is why I think Mother's Day is always a little bit hard for me to embrace because people are celebrating it and loving it, creating, these stories behind it and moments. And even though it's just a holiday, it's a little bit, I don't know how to feel around it, because then I'm also a single mom. I don't have anyone to celebrate me and being a great mom and being a mom that I can be. I have friends that will show up in situations at times, but it's different. It's different when there's, someone who lives the life of my child and knows what he's going through and is a part of him. You know what I mean? Even through my grandparent, who's a part of him. You know what I mean? Like there isn't any of that where my mom could say, "You're doing such a great job being a mom." You know what I mean? Like there's none of that. You would know
Mm-hmm.
that how well I am being a mom based on how far I've come in life, you know what I mean? And how you see your grandchild growing up. But unfortunately, we don't have that relationship. And that's, hard. But that's why I think Mother's Day has always been a little bit, a little eerie for me.
Mm-hmm. So for me, so for my mom, there's a question I just want to ask, but for my mom, my mother's mother abandoned her when she was 3,
Mm,
and her father died when she was 8.
mm,
So she grew up with her aunt. But I don't think my mother knew how to. I'm trying to say this to be respectful because I don't. Cause my mother wasn't a hugger,
yeah,
and she wasn't the most affectionate in terms of like hugging or kissing or saying I love you. That wasn't her thing, and
yeah,
I think had to do with the fact that her mom abandoned her when she was 8. I mean
yeah.
3, and her father died when she was 8. So and then she was raised by her aunt who favored her younger sister more than she favored her. So there
Mm,
was all these dynamics going on. So when it came to us, my mother's way of showing that she cared was cooking and like doing. Her thing was doing. She was the person who would do more than she would say or show. Yeah.
service.
Yeah. An act of service. And I think that's where I learned that from.
Yeah, I can see that.
So I guess for you, under similar circumstances, how did you learn how to be a mother if you didn't have a mother to show you how to be a mother?
Well, with a dynamic that was painful and hurtful, it taught me what not to do. It taught me um, more of how I would want to do things different. And then with all the 90s shows like the Huxtables
Mm-hmm.
and Family Matters and all the shows that kind of show what a mother or family is like. And also, I'm a big observer in public. So I will say, even having a child is when my eyes opened up to where I'm in airports and I'm like, oh, wow, the way he just did that, the way she just did that. Oh, or even the terrible situations I watch and going, oh, they're not paying any attention to the child. So there were a lot of things that because I didn't have it at home very much, I had no choice but to observe and look around me and see it through even friends. strangers, friends. I was always, in love with the mom of my friends. Mom, hey, mom, and it was always, that nurturing, and they would always love me. And then I had a beautiful grandmother. And like I said, during my upbringing, she did do what she could to show me how much she loved me because I slept with her till I was 9 years old, even though I had my own bed. I did things that I could do, to be as close as I could to her. And at the time, maybe I didn't appreciate it as much because I was always on punishment, getting in trouble. And I always would blame her for getting me in trouble, like, I'm always in trouble. You must be telling her everything I'm doing. But as I grew up and moved out around 17, 18, I was able to see a side of my grandma that I wasn't able to see when I was living with her. More so maturity, right? I'm more mature, I'm more aware, and I'm calling her, I'm checking on her, and she still was living with my mom, and she would now say, "Don't tell your mom," and I was like, oh, she never did that growing up. She would be scared to do that growing up. So it was nice to see this side of my grandma that loved me. And when I would go visit her, we would go right back to where it was, laying down together, cuddling. So I think that was a nurturing side that maybe I just didn't appreciate or recognize when I was growing up, but I very much recognized it into my adulthood. And I had my son at 28. So by that time, I had a different relationship with my grandmother. I had a different relationship with myself. I wasn't so hard, I wasn't so you know, defensive. I was more so, it's like when you're pregnant, you go through such a nesting stage that
Mm-hmm.
you almost like, you're protective. You're like the mama bird protecting her nest, and you're just like, nothing negative is going to touch this. So I definitely think a lot of it helped me evolve, as well as having a few of those examples or just being aware of certain things, observing. So I just had to learn from the lessons around me, really. That's why I don't also believe in when people say I'm a product of my environment. You
Mm-hmm.
don't always have to be a product of your environment. You don't always have to be, how they taught you. You got to whoop they behind because you got your
Mm-hmm.
behind, you know. And I think a lot of that, I'm for each his own on how they punish or discipline their children, but I chose not to. And I think that was healthy for me because it forced me to not revert to raising my hand like I was naturally open to doing, because I was always ready, like defensively, like what. And for me it was like I had to learn how to communicate, I had to learn how to use my words, and a lot of that was also observing people and how they did that, and I was just like, okay, I like that, and I would take notes. So I think it's really about having the will to want to do things different.
So for my mom, my mom was raised in both Cologne, Panama,
Mm-hmm.
and East New York, Brooklyn, and both of those neighborhoods have a reputation of being pretty violent. It can be both, and I lived I both. I lived in Panama for a minute, in Cologne, like literally in the apartment she lived in, and it was pretty. Like we had a big time drug dealer who lived next door and had a Black Panther, and like it was wild.
Oh, wow.
And then in Brooklyn too, spent a lot of time in Brooklyn. Um, so I think because of that, because of the environment, my mother was very protective, but she was also, I think she was very, I don't want to say fear based. She was very cautious of us going outside. And even though we lived in a nice neighborhood, we moved around a lot. So sometimes it was a nice neighborhood, sometimes it wasn't. But when we lived in this really nice neighborhood, she was like, don't go too far. And like she was very protective in that sense. And because of that, I think part of my normal personality was to be outside. I always wanted to be outside all the time. So
Mm-hmm.
when I had the chance to be on my own and I would go outside, I'd be gone. Like when I moved out, I was people wouldn't see me for months because I'd be here and there and what have you. So as a mother, I guess when you have to come to that crossing the road where your son is want to be outside and want to run the streets, and Like, how do you as a single mom approach that? Because your boys want to be outside, and to be a young black boy, it's dangerous out there. And should try to be outside and run the streets like I did. I was running the streets in the '90s in New York and in Jersey, and a little bit of California, but mostly like in New York. So how do you think you're going to approach when he wants to get out? Because all boys want to get off the porch and run around.
I mean, honestly, that's actually more of a concern on how to get our boys out on the streets in a healthy way. I'd have to say the generation these days,
Mm-hmm.
they're not wanting to go outside as much. And I have to do my best to encourage healthy ways of going outside because he'd rather be inside and be to himself. And that's not just because I homeschool, but most kids that I know, most parents are dealing with that with their children, boys and girls. They'd rather kind of be in the house unless they're hanging out, at a friend's house.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and my son is pretty outgoing. He's, adventurous like me. So he's down to go do stuff, but I hope that what he takes away from this are activities that he sees he can go do, where he can go run, go jog, go hike, go, somewhere where it's fun, even camping, just wanting to be outdoors in healthier ways, because these kids ain't really walking the streets. They
Mm-hmm.
ain't to walk down the street like me. I couldn't wait to just go get some milk sometimes. You know what I mean? Like, I just want to be outside. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I just wanted to have a reason to drive.
Yeah.
They
Mm-hmm.
don't really have an urge to want to drive. And I'm going to encourage it more in the future soon because he is
Mm-hmm.
15, maybe by 16. But he has a lot of other priorities to focus on. So as that time comes, I hope that it can come down to just him having the desire to have that little bug and go outside and go do activities. But besides that, even in South Africa, that was why I was grateful to have such a space to create a community or um, a place for him to kind of do activities on his own. Um, in Cape Town, it can be known as dangerous all over South Africa. There can be, street kids, it could be street homeless people, it could be all the things that could be concerning, but there is something about there is something about the era in South Africa that actually creates this feeling of being in the 90s there too.
Yeah.
So it's not quite as we see it's dangerous like it is today, where they're kidnapping and doing things. Not to say they're not doing any of that in South Africa, but the space and the community I was able to build for him, where he could ride his bike to go to tennis, he could ride his bike to soccer. He had met some friends at those venues that happened to live down the street. So they would meet up and go ride together. And I was so grateful to have been able to offer that for him, because realistically, there literally isn't any of that these days. Like, what kid is riding their bike to go meet
Mm-hmm.
up? I was riding my bike around the block and would meet kids or see a kid from school, or but you don't see anyone hanging outside at all. Like, no one's hanging,
Yeah.
or walking home from school. I would find ways to get into stuff. And I think for the kids these days, and I still don't look at it any different from my son being homeschooled versus being in school, but there's not really a drive to be outside because of the dangers in America,
Mm-hmm.
or at least in LA. I don't know what it's like in Central America and all the other areas, but in LA, nobody goes outside. Everybody is cautious.
Mm-hmm.
And now, that he's had that experience in South Africa, where he could ride his bike and he can go to places independently. I mean, look, he saw a lot of things out there that even for himself, he's like, it's crazy out there. I mean, there were kids, homeless kids, who found guns. And I don't know if they were real guns. They might have been toy guns. They might have been real knives or fake knives. But he
Mm-hmm.
saw things. but it helped him create a sense of judgment, first of all, which is good, street smart, because without kids going outside, they're never going to be able to witness the things that they should and shouldn't do, really.
Mhm.
You know, when you become a man, you're like, yeah, no, I'm good. Like,
Yeah.
or you're aware and your senses are there, So I think for me, having a young boy who is going to want to go into the streets, I hope that it'll be places that he can go and feel like, okay, this is a healthy space to be in. And
Mhm.
it's more, I'd rather go do this than go do that. So,
Uh, for myself growing up, I had to deal with a lot of I call it coincidental violence. You're at the club get shot up. You're at the party get shot up. You're outside, fight happens. You know what I mean? So for yourself as a mother and as a single mom, and shout out to all the single moms out there who are watching this. Uh, you're gonna have to deal with a lot of firsts. First time driving a car, first girlfriend, first heartbreak, first,
yeah.
and being that your mom wasn't like, how are you gonna how do you approach that? Like, how do you have you thought about any of that? Because I know you dealt with a lot of first already, walking and talking, but now it's like teen mom first and then man first, and it's all, you know.
You know what? When you're a parent, you don't even think about what that looks like at any
Hmm.
zone, at any course of their development. You literally just wait for that time to come and you're like, okay, this is a time to maybe mention it. This is a time to, like, for me, the only thing that comes up is I don't want to not mention some of these things. I don't want to miss the moment to not. So I have to wait for the time for it to be fitting and for it to be called on where he's now interested in girls. He's not interested in dating. Now he's interested in going out with one or meeting up with them. I mean, I'm the one who was encouraging him to meet up with friends at the mall in South Africa. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Come on, let's
Yeah,
go. Come on, let's go. It's boring. What do you mean it's boring? You go walk around, you hang out, and it's like back in the day, I couldn't wait to go to the
I
mall.
couldn't wait. Yeah, exactly.
We just hung out in the mall, groups of
Hmm.
kids, and
All day.
they don't do that at all in the
Hmm.
malls. I mean, who knows? Maybe in some other malls, but it's not a conversation. It's not a thing of like, I used to even go hang out on Crenshaw in LA. It's
Hmm.
like the kids, even though it wasn't the most safest space, but it was like, well, my neighborhood didn't really do that. Maybe the mall would be cool, but you know what? Oh, they hanging out over there on Crenshaw. I want to go to Crenshaw.
Hmm.
So I think for these kids, their hangout is on video games and and
Yeah.
to them on the speaker. And so I'm sitting here like, how do we make this more of an active thing? I think for me as a mom, I am proud of not allowing him to get too consumed by his devices.
Hmm.
I have had to take certain things away, unfortunately, because of grade levels and things like that. But
Hmm.
um, you know, ultimately he's usually really good with what he does because it would be only on the weekend, it wouldn't be on the weekday. And so now it's just finding the balance. So when it comes down to having those uncomfortable conversations as a mom, I mean, it's just as much as when I had to learn to teach him how to pee standing up.
Mm.
You know, what am I going to do teaching him how to pee to stand up? Well, here we go. Let's do it.
Hmm.
Let's talk about it. And you figure it out. So you don't, I didn't plan it going, how is that going to look? What am I supposed to do? I'm like, all right, it's time. All right, you're going to do it like this. Is that right? Do you flick it? Do you hit it? Do you shake it? What do you do? And so you kind of learn as you go. Same thing with like, depending on his relationship level, his desire, having those conversations. Right now, those things are just not as significant right now. And that's all because I'm all about creating certain healthy spaces for him so that he is more focused on one more than the other.
At any point, so for my, I didn't know a lot about my mother's history until she passed. I didn't know what she was like in high school. I learned that all from I got really close to my aunt. She's technically my mother's cousin, but I got really close to her, just being out after my mom passed, just hanging out with her all the time. And I found out a lot about my mother from her. My mother didn't divulge a lot of that personal stuff. I guess back in the day in the 80s and 90s, it was like kids are kids, parents are parents. I didn't get to the point in age wise where we would start seeing each other as she sees me as an adult. So I never learned a lot about my mother's history. Uh, so at what point do you think you're going to tell your son your story? And are you conscious about things that you want to divulge or the things you don't want to divulge? Or if we ask the question, you'll tell him.
Yeah, if he asks the question, I'll tell him. But I slowly try to as much as I can. I don't know if it's a boy thing, but a lot of times boys could care less. They're just like, oh. So I share things as I go, talking about me and my mom, my
Hmm.
relationship. Sometimes he'll hear me having a conversation. I think that's when he finds more interest because now they're asking questions. So he's like hearing the questions that are being asked to get more information. But as
Hmm.
far as him, when I just share, he's like, I'm like, you have any questions? And he's like, yeah, no. So I also understand that's part of development, right? And so they don't really have all of that, or not they, my son in particular,
Hmm.
because all of them are alike, don't really always have that desire to want to be given information that is unnecessary. You know what I mean? And that goes for the same of like anything else when he asks about his paternal side or the other stuff that he may want to know. I ask him now, is
Hmm.
there, oh, and any questions? No. Okay. All right. Well, when that time comes, I always ask God to help me prepare for the time to be
Hmm.
here. I will be able to have that conversation, but I don't know how I'll answer. I don't know how I'll react. I don't know how I'll feel, but I do have those conversations in just preparing myself, knowing that time will come and not to worry and go, what if, oh my gosh, what's going to happen if no, it's like, okay, God, it's going to come. And hopefully I'm going to be able to guide the best way possible, the way you need me to. So I do look forward to those things, even though they're a little bit nerve wracking.
So the world knows you as like a model and an actress and on video deal stuff. Does he think you're cool?
Not at all. I am so not cool. Like, I think he's only gotten used to some of the work I've been doing, even just recently, because I'm self taping, I'm content creating. Oh, that makes him cringe, is how much I do, monetize on my social medias where I have to engage or I have to create content. And I think only now he's starting to see how I make a business out of it. And this is how I make a living. And he doesn't think I'm cool. But I think over time, now that he's a little older, he's seeing it as it's just what I do.
Hmm. So when he sees your picture, like in South Africa, you had a picture in the mall or your pictures in the magazine, or like he's not like, hey, that's my mom, or he's just like whatever.
When he was little, he was. I have a video I just watched the other day. It was actually him and I. I was like, was it cool? Is it cool? He goes, you know, where then as things got, you know, uh, he got older and there was a picture in the mall in South Africa. He was tired of seeing it. Okay. I see it all the time. Okay. And all his friends would be like, your mom. And he'll be like, he'll just keep walking like he doesn't see it. And I'm like, are you embarrassed? Are you like, I don't
Yeah.
really understand it. I just have to say, he's being a boy. He doesn't feel good, but I guess what can I expect from a boy who doesn't think a lot of things are cool? You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I realize that's just how boys are. They love their mom, and then there's this level of ugh, okay, all right. And I mean, I guess I would have to say it's no different than having a daughter because at some point a daughter is going to be competitive and be that way too. So there's just a teenage thing where they just reject anything you do, and hopefully when he's older, he will be able to embrace this idea of who I was.
As a boy, because my mom was like attractive, like yourself, and you don't want other boys to think your mom's attractive at all. It's like you don't even want them to say your mom's attractive. Like you even think, oh, hey, your mom has nice hair. You're like, what are you looking at my mom's hair for? So maybe you might be in that stage of it, I guess.
I don't think so, but hey, if that's what it is, I understand people say, "Oh, boys be so jealous," they don't like when, and I'm like, he never
Hmm.
gets expression. He just kind of, oh, who you going with? Oh, what are you doing? He don't ask questions like, why, who, what's, nothing. He just like, oh, who's that? All right, tell him to say hi. All right, and he just moves on. So it's not like anything like that. I think it's just things are so nonchalant for him. I think it's just a nonchalant mentality of everything,
So,
everything.
so if, because he has that nonchalant attitude, so my family, my dad started and tried to own several businesses. So he not tried, he started and owned several businesses, and my mother did the same, which internally gave me a sense of independence to try to do things on my own. And I was always an ambitious person, but I know people who are not. How do you teach your child ambition? Like, how does what you say? What does that look like? Because I know from examples, and I know, but I've had my father had the conversations with me about what do you want to do with your life? What do you want to like? Just getting you prepared early. He started talking to me about what I want to do in my life when I was like the eighth grade, something like the eighth, ninth grade. So, how do you teach your child ambition?
I think that's exactly the only way is to be the example. Um, my mom, even though we weren't very close, she was ambitious. She was very, hardworking black woman kind of life, you know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
always new business and always, had entrepreneurship under whatever she was doing for the city, and so she always had a drive. Which in that sense, I'm glad that was the example I had where my father was on drugs and alcohol and didn't have that drive. I don't know what that would have looked like. That's why I say, okay, well, God, he designed things the way it was supposed to be. And maybe I may not have liked the dynamic, but there was a lot that I gained from it. As well as me being an example for my son, this is why I travel with him. This is why, God put on my heart for me to take him out of America to have a more well rounded experience so he could utilize that. I mean, we talk about, his next trip where he wants to go, Japan. Cool. Let's think big. Let's think that big. Let's figure that out. I mean, we
Mm-hmm.
are planning, but if that's your goal, cool. I'm glad there's a goal. I'm glad there's a desire. There's a want. And even though he doesn't talk about it a lot, I do. Yeah, he
Mm-hmm.
wants to go to Japan, and when he goes to Japan, so it's almost like you put that out there for them and you teach them how to think in a way that what you want is yours, and if you want it, claim it, believe it, think it, and in a way, that's how I show up. I may not always say those things, but I show up that way. And I'm always, you know, um, going to the next venture. I'm never, not doing something. Yeah, I have down times at home and, all the things that a human being or, a time for you to recharge needs to happen. But as far going to have a new goal or desire, there's always that I show up as. So for work wise, we talk here and there about what he would like to do in the career field, but my goal is always to encourage how do you want to make an impact in this world, not so much what kind of job do you want to do. So when we talk about what does he like to do, what does he like, what is he interested in, he's not really sure. So I'm like, okay, that's cool. Like I don't, it's not a pressure because I know there's some kids who already know at that age. And, for us, I've already exposed him to so much. So it's not like I'm not doing anything. I'm exposing him to spaces. And hopefully one day someone might chime in and say, you know what? We should travel to da 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 da. And he's going to be like, all right, because he's not scared to travel. He knows what traveling is like. And maybe by then he'll realize how important travel is and why that's, something he should do. But right now, I think that me being the best example, and that's also why I had to change my life. That's also why I had to change my life and change my ways about, what I got involved in, with like going out and, social, connections and substances and things that were maybe more of a distraction for me that I was like, hey, I gotta level up for my kid so then I can guide him in the best spaces like that. So I think for me, it was just about wanting to be my best version so he can see what it's like to be his best version.
So for a person like myself, like your son, I grew up all over the place. Panama, Saudi Arabia, and I traveled like yourself to a bunch of different countries, what have you. for whatever reason, just being the first couple of years of my life, I'm an American, born American, so I'm not an immigrant, which is not a bad thing. But I'm saying that to say that first couple of years of my life, I was living overseas. I'm a citizen born abroad, is what they call it. And when I came to America, when I'm here, I don't feel so American. I guess because of all the cultural understandings that I have from other places. And then when I'm somewhere else, I feel so American. I feel like I'm waving the flag every place I go to. So for your son and being a person who's being well traveled, I guess do you do you want him to have the American patriotism? Do you want him like how do you how do you think or would you like him to present himself as a like in terms of who he is as a person? I guess if that makes sense. Like,
I think for my son to have American experience and also a global experience, he'll be able to choose where his comfort is. So far, having an American experience is hands down his comfort level, but he may go to Japan and feel more like he resonates with the Japanese.
mm-hmm,
He, loves their food. He may acquire wanting to learn the language. He may, there's all these possibilities that I look forward to just seeing what gets developed or how it evolves when he does have the time to choose. Because I think, when we were 18, 19, 20, we were still like, I don't know. I don't
mm-hmm,
know. And then somebody
yeah,
sparked something, into our 20s, 30s, and then I'm interested in that. I want to do
mm-hmm,
that.
mm-hmm,
So I just look forward to that because now he's going to have this experience under his belt that he can now choose from rather than not having an option to choose from at all. Because, like, I didn't know how much traveling was so important until I started traveling. My goal was when he was born to, take him overseas or to travel for his birthday versus doing a birthday party, because he's a summer baby. So for me, I was always like, I want him to experience people, things, culture. This is a time where I can use that money on, him and his experiences. So and I don't take that lightly. I think that's something God truly put on my heart for a good reason, for that purpose, because, me, I just wanted to be bi-coastal. And now here I am being bi-global. And I was like, I want to live in LA and New York. Oh, Miami would be nice too. But as Americans, we don't think outside of our bubble.
yeah,
It's not, we're like, I want to live in Dubai. You might want to visit Dubai, but no
yeah,
one living. And that is something that I think now we're starting to evolve in, and the new generation is starting to allow us to have access. And maybe because of social media, we're seeing what's out there now, But as an American, I wanted him to experience other things. America talks a lot about politics. Outside of the world, they don't always talk about, or outside of America, they don't always talk about politics. And that was what I kind of wanted him to be removed from, because it was like you're drowning, you're like so noisy, and it's like you can't even see what's going on around you because you're so worried about what's going to happen to you. You know what I mean? And so I think for me, just giving him the experiences that I have, I just thank God every day, like, thank you, God. Like, you're going to provide what you want from your son to be as he becomes a young man and gets older. All I'm here to do is help guide him in what you are going to, you know, bring him through as I plant the seeds is exactly what it's supposed to be. I'm not here to force anything. I can only just do my best in encouraging what I know. And along the way, I'm still learning colleges, how to apply for colleges, how to get involved. I mean, a friend of mine was also mentioning, going to put him in a college tour that he has some other kids in over in the Midwest. And I was like, that would be great. And see, that's God planning these moments, these opportunities. So then I could see that there's ways to go check it out. And I'm like, I would like him to go onto a tour. That would be great. Now I don't have to go look for a tour. Now he's going to have an opportunity to have a tour. So I just think whatever ends up resonating with him, because he's really good in school. Like, I never really cared to go to college, because I wasn't good at it. But he's so good at it. And it's not to say he loves it, but I do hope that he'd have that ambition, that desire, that drive to want to get a master's or whatever it is. But I also am okay with if he doesn't push that far, because some of those things don't even matter with today's era, with what's needed and what your qualifications are. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
being a cook, I want him to, you know, go and step forward into that, because that's something he's so good at. And maybe he will do it. Maybe he can be a cook for, I don't know, a ship or something, wild, but at the same time, or maybe even a cook in Japan, who
Mm-hmm.
knows, but I think that it allows him to have so many options that, the choices that he'll make are based on what I've been able to share with him and give him the experience around.
So I know we have to go soon, but I just have one last question. Recently, he went on his first solo venture without you. He went on a trip without you being involved.
Yeah.
Well, not you being involved. He went on like a camping trip. What did you learn from it? What did he learn from it? And what was the experience like?
Yeah, Alexander went on this camping trip by himself without me. And I think for me, that was a big milestone, because I was excited that he was going to do something with other kids. And also, I've been cautious about like other kids being a bad influence or tainting him. I also felt it was also safe because it was a part of a church, and it was, a few chaperones that I knew who were going to be involved. And so, at least in that case, I knew, okay, he's safe. But as far as just going to be a part of something without me, I really found myself emotional. It's another milestone, just like when he would go to school, his next first grade of school, third, fourth grade of school. I'm sitting going, first day. He's big man. Yeah, ready. Okay. And I'm like, so I would find myself more emotional, because I think milestones are always, I think I'm always going to be like that. I mean, obviously, I'm going to cry at his wedding. I'm going to cry when he wants to go abroad. I'm going to cry when he wants to do something on his own. And it's more so being proud. It's not even like I'm sad. It's more of just being proud and like, we can't go back to what it used to be. We have to go forward. And the back is when it was like cute and cuddly and all the funness. And now it's like he's even more further and further away from me through these milestones. But also, you know, watching him reap the reward of becoming a man and becoming himself, who he wants to be. I think for Mother's Day, overall for Mother's Day, it's really allowed me to explore what Mother's Day is really about. It's not just one day, it's every day. It's how I nurture my relationship with my son. um, Even with all the trauma and the things that I haven't been able to really restore, but I've been able to heal from. It's been how I love on my son through those things. Um, it's interesting because Mother's Day looks different for everyone. And I just hope that what he takes away from Mother's Day and how he treats his mom and who his mom was and how he's going to treat his wife in the future, or, teach his children and daughters and sons how they're going to be. Um, that, Mother's Day is an everyday thing, and also a celebratory day, definitely make them feel special. But it is something that I hope that he recognizes just from the nurturing and even the over lovingness that I give him, that he'll be able to have all the experiences that I've offered him through travel, through our bond, through just experiences in life, that he'll be able to see what it's like to have a mother that's healthy in a relationship emotionally, because that's also very hard to find, and hopefully you want your son or kids to have that same in their partner. So I love the fact that, yes, Mother's Day for me kind of forces me to reflect. It forces me to kind of appreciate who I am as a mother, but not just for the one special holiday, but for every day. So I'm thankful, and I shout out to all the mothers that are out there that have had to hold it down strong by themselves. And yeah, they're not just a mother, a warrior. They're actually, carrying a superpower, and a superpower that is an everyday kind of battle, where they have to have a walk, and they see themselves through their kids, and they're better than the version of who their parents were to them. And I think for us, especially in this new generation, we're going to be able to raise our children into a new generation of what love really looks like.
Well, I would, before I leave, I just want to say thank you for having me on the show again. I really appreciate it. I want to say happy Mother's Day to all the mothers who are going to be viewing this, and happy Mother's Day to all the men, mothers and wives who are going to be, to you specifically. I've known you for a while, and have had the privilege of seeing your journey and seeing you go through the ups and downs and become the different versions of yourself. You're a person who constantly tries to make yourself better. You're a person who constantly strives not for yourself, but for your son. Not only are you a mother to your son, but you've been a mother to a lot of these orphan kids in South Africa. A lot of people don't know the amount of work you've done for them. It came out of your own pocket. And I don't want to tell your business, but you've done a lot for these children in South Africa who don't have parents. So happy Mother's Day to you. You've been a blessing in my life. You've been a blessing to other people's life. And I wish you nothing but the best on this Mother's Day.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I really do. And I appreciate you being on the show, being a
So,
part of a special period in my life, seeing me be a mother and experiencing a lot of the things that I am to not just my son, but to other children. So I appreciate this particular episode because you've been able to see and respect the mother that I am. So thank you.
you're welcome.
And thank you for being a part of Living the Dream with Tia.